The word niche is kind of a weird word, and it might be in the glare there, so we'll make it even bigger. Alright, the word niche right here, we talked about in class. If you have a little dent in your table, that is a squeaky marker. You might call that like a little niche in the wood, or a little dent in the wood. Well, something like dirt normally, or food, whatever, can fit in that dent perfectly. A niche in nature is also like a little dent that an animal fits in perfectly. So for each animal, what a niche is well, let me write down the two things because they're basically two parts of being a good niche for the animal. Alright, so the 2 points are where it lives and what it does. On page, I don't know, 264, somewhere around there. We can get the exact numbers in class because that's the only place you have a book. And again, if you have a book, please bring it back. We are missing half our books. So if you have a Green Life Science with the polar bear book, bring the polar bear book back so that I have them, please, because half of them are gone. Anyways, speaking of polar bears, the page in the polar bear book that talks about niches talks about polar bears. If you think of the Arctic, like a big snowy winter frozen land, all that stuff, you have where it lives. But if you just know an animal lives there, you don't know exactly where it fits, what its little dent in the table is, its little nick in the table, whatever. We need to figure out where it lives and what it does. So a polar bear lives in the Arctic, but if I tell you that a penguin lives in the Arctic, you don't really know what the penguin does. You're like, well, is a penguin roam the snow and catch seals and tear them apart and eat them and feed it to its cubs? No, that's a polar bear. So a polar bear lives in the Arctic, and what it does is it acts as the biggest predator. It can kill whatever's out there. It can catch seals, sometimes fish. Sometimes it'll steal a fish and use it to club a seal to death, and it'll eat them both. I'm not sure that's ever actually happened, but it'd be cool. The other animals that are out there, like a seal also lives in the Arctic, but it's different from a polar bear. What it does is it lives out in the water. And it can live in the water, it can live on the land, it swims in the water, it can catch fish. And finally, you also have like fish out there. What is a fish? An Arctic fish. It lives in the Arctic, but it lives in the water in the Arctic. And it is a prey animal that swims around in the water. It eats random plants, whatever it can find, probably other parts of dead fish because it's in the Arctic, not a lot of plants would grow. So, where it lives and what it does. That's how it fits in the environment. In Africa, if you know that a giraffe lives in Africa and a cheetah lives in Africa, you also kind of have to know what they do to really know anything about them. So if we say a giraffe's niche, that's not just like, oh, Africa. No, that's not its niche. That's the table. But the specific dent in the table that the giraffe lives in is that it lives in big open areas with tall trees. You're not going to see a giraffe swimming underwater a whole lot trying to catch an alligator for food or whatever. That would be silly. So, a giraffe lives in Africa, and what it does, its specific little dent in the table, or nick in the table for the giraffe, is that it eats things with tall branches, okay? So, that's a niche. If you need to know what a niche is, think of a little nick in the table, and if I want you to describe the niche of an animal, or why an animal fits into its niche, you have to figure out how does the animal match the environment with where it lives and what it does in that environment.